Now we've got my presentation up, I hope. And for some, I think Zoom is always doing something new because all of the things are at the top. It looks like we have 17 participants. Thank you all for hanging in with me. Yeah, I think we're up and rolling. We'll see. Okay, so is it centered enough on your screen and everything looks okay and you can hear me all right?
Yeah, it looks perfect.
Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm happy to be with you today for sure about a topic that I love, which is what I said before, but I didn't realize I wasn't up. Okay, so planting vegetables in the fall. It's actually, I believe in San Diego County, way more fun to plant vegetables in the fall than it is to plant any other time of year. And that's because we have the biggest selections of things to plant at this time of year. And also it's a great time of year for us to all think about cooking and doing wonderful events around food. And there's lots of things that we can grow quickly to give us, that real fun experience of pulling something from the yard and bringing it right into our kitchens. So I want you to see some of the things that excite me. I'm going to start with my favorite, and that is the snap pea. It's a favorite because you can eat it raw right as you graze through your garden, or of course you can saute it or put it in any other vegetable, any other dish you'd like. There's the beet, the real beet down here, the root crop. Yummy, yummy, very good for us. But there's also the beet green crop. I hope you can see my cursor as I'm moving it around. So the greens are absolutely fabulous, sauteed with a little bit of garlic and olive oil, just so yummy. Many different kinds of carrots, many more kinds of carrots than you're going to see in the market. Then we go on to all the greens you can grow in the winter. You can grow arugulas and several different kinds of lettuces and kale. Just amazing things that you can grow in the winter. I don't have a picture of cilantro, but everybody wants it for their guacamole. And there's a bunch of avocados that grow in the fall and winter. So cilantro is the crop for you if you like that. Then the one crop that there's so many different kinds, we can't even believe it, and that's what we call the brassica crops, or the cucurbits, which is kind of hard for me to say. So we're talking about all the things like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, radishes, and I think I could go on. I have a whole list of them, maybe 15 or 20 of the brassica crops, including the arugula, watercress. I'm looking at my notes now. Brussels sprouts, if I haven't mentioned it, rutabaga, horseradish, kohlrabi, kale, and a huge amount. All of these are our fall vegetables, and you must love just one of those. So I'm just trying to kind of whet your appetite so you get excited about doing this. Then I'll move on. All right, so now this is a list from a chart. And I will send this chart. If you're interested, I will email this chart to your coordinator so they can get it out to you. But this is the chart that I have of planting vegetable seeds all year round. And in San Diego County, the list, if you'll notice the October, November list, every month of the year in San Diego County, almost every month looks like that. July and August are a little shorter, but there's still half a dozen that you can plant then. So there's never a time in San Diego County when you can't start your garden, and start your garden with a lot of choices. So now we're going to get to what we need to know how to do in order to start that garden. This is back to 3rd grade, right? And some of you probably have taught that, and you know they need water and soil and the right temperature. The fall is our cooler time of year. The crops that I've just talked about are all things that will germinate in cool weather and will grow rapidly even though the weather is cool. So obviously soil, temperature, light. Let's go over those components. First, I'd like to talk about location. And this is something that I run into a lot when I'm talking to people at our seminars or when we have a display at the fair or something like that. And my first question to gardeners is, what direction does your garden face? And a lot of people just don't think about that, and it's critical. So exposure is great. Southern exposure is the best. Western's okay, not so great. North is problematic. So if you have an eastern or southern place that you can put your garden where it will get full sun, you're going to have the most success. I'd like you to take a look at this page. This is a wonderful page of, let me know if you lose me, okay? Because I just got a sign that my internet connection is unstable. I don't know why. I've never had that problem. So let me know if you lose me, okay? I don't know how you're gonna let me know if you lose me, right? Oh, dear, difficult, difficult. I see the thumbs up. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is a raised bed along a fence, and it appears as if there's some shadow here. If you'll notice, these are the things that I would ask you if I was in live with you. I've got my Master Gardener outfit on today. I'd love to be with you live, but I can't be.
Darn it.
Oh, time I'll bring you things for this garden because they have 1, 2, 3 beds that are getting full sun, or so it appears. This bed, you have to think about what you're going to plant in it. This would be the bed to plant your lettuces in. Lettuce will take a lot of shade. So just you have to think about where you put your. Now moving on to soil containers, soil in containers. I just want to cover a little bit about containers and a little bit about in the ground because I'm not sure how you're going to plant. If this is in truth your first time out with growing some vegetables in the fall, I highly recommend a container because you can get such good results quickly. Even if you're going in the ground, I grow things in containers and in the ground whenever I'm growing because certain crops work better for me in containers, and you might find that to be the case also. But vegetables grown in containers really need planting mix. They need some kind of a commercial soil mix. I say that because there's too many problems you can get in a container that you don't usually experience in the ground. The reason you won't get them in the ground is because in the ground, there's time for the soil to have built up its microbiology and the mycorrhizae work together that help you fight problems. You don't have that in a container. You throw your typical dirt in, it may not drain very well, it may have a disease, whatever. It's just not worth it. So if you're going to start and have a great crop, always grow your container vegetables in commercial soil. So it'll grow in you're going to grow them with the potting soil or raised bed mix. Almost any of them that are in bags is going to work fine. It's a combination of soil, but it doesn't have garden soil in it. Okay, moving on. It has good porosity and aeration. It drains well. It absorbs water more quickly. It has balanced pH. pH is important. That's your soil acidity or alkalinity. And most plants like a little bit of soil acidity. So your mixes are balanced or have a little more acidity. They're lightweight. They're sanitized to be free of everything you need, all the unwanted stuff. And it doesn't, and it's not too heavy. So those are the reasons why I'm pumping up having planting mix if you're going to use a container. Moving on to raised beds. Okay, so you've got raised beds or garden beds. This would be a row crop in your regular garden. You see how they've mounded up a little bit to give good drainage. Good idea.
Get it.
I hear someone asking a question. No? Okay, moving on. You generally need a larger area if you're going to plant outside in rows because you've got to walk in between them. You want to make sure your area is level so that you're not getting too much runoff either onto your garden and off of your garden. You've got to retain your moisture, particularly in San Diego County. The quality of your soil makes a difference. If you do not have great quality soil, you add a couple 2 to 4 inches of compost and work it into the top 6 inches of soil, mound it up and make these kind of nice berms to put your plant will be facing south. And you want to put your rows, this is pretty important, so listen up. So you want to make sure that they can see the east sun coming up and the west sun going down, and then they'll grow straight and sturdy. Real important to do that. That works in raised beds also. I'm apologizing for this picture because it's clearly from the Midwest. Look at all that great lawn around we don't have that here in Southern California. Anyway, I picked the picture because I wanted to show you that this person has used some wood to make a raised bed. They've also used some old wood, like tree trunks or something here. Split wood. You can make a raised bed out of virtually anything. So if you want to use a raised bed because you want to get it high enough so it's more convenient to reach into, or you want to get it up off the ground because of the type of soil you have, so that you can use like a raised bed planting mix. You can use anything to raise the sides of your beds, plastic, cement, whatever you've got. But try to make sure that it's no more than 1 to 3 feet wide. Even these beds that I'm showing here might be a little wide. You need to be able to reach across the bed without stepping into it. And 4 feet is just too long a reach for most people. So go for 1 to 3 feet wide for your raised bed. You can use the prepared soil mixes. Raised bed mixes are not that expensive, and they will join into your regular soil. And you can work in some of the native soil, probably no more than a third, but that works okay. And especially if you've grown things in your yard. If you have a garden already that you're growing some plants in, you have a sense of how your yard is growing. If you have a lot of problems getting things started, a lot of plants have died, go for the raised bed method. Okay, so what do we do? Are we going to plant seeds, or are we going to plant transplants? And seeds are great fun because there's so many choices with seeds, and there's so many great catalogs and places to get good seeds. If you can make your decision first, not maybe using seeds, but at least looking at the seeds, you'll know what to look for in transplants if you decide to use some transplants. Transplants are good to get your garden going quickly. Seeds take a little longer. But the seeds, one of the more important thing about seeds is to read your seed packet. Just recently, I decided to put in some sweet peas. I have a friend who's its favorite flower, and she's not well, so I wanted to have some sweet peas for her this spring. And I looked at the seed packets, and there weren't that many that were the early flowering varieties. I needed to find the seed packet that had early flowering on it. I needed to have the seed packet that showed me how many days to flowering on it. So the shortest amount of time. Same thing with all of them. So you look at your seed packet, you're going to find out what the seed is, what's the hybrid, usually what time of year to plant it. But again, in San Diego, we can plant almost all the time, so that's not as critical. But days to harvest is pretty critical. Find one that has short days to harvest. So if you're planting radishes, they grow really fast, but you'll find that some grow faster than others. Same thing with carrots and snap peas. You want the one that's not designed to be planted in the Midwest in the May. You want the one that's okay for San Diego in the fall. And lots of information on the seed packet. It's a great thing to read. Love my seed packets. Okay, how about if you want to go and use some older seeds, something that you've had for a while, or something that someone's given to you. You've got a friend and they say, oh, I always grow these. So you don't know whether they are good or not. And the only way to find out is to check it out. I recommend the seed in a baggie test for viability. You put some seed on a paper towel and you wet the paper towel. As you can see here, it's in a see-through bag. So a lot of people talk about folding over the paper towel on top of the seeds. That's okay, except if you open it up to look at it, you can rip off the new little root. So I recommend just the paper towel and flip it over so the seeds are on the table so that you don't see them much. And there's the wet paper towel on the top of them. And then after 3 or 4 days, you can flip it over and see if you start to see any roots forming or any little leaves coming out. So it depends on your crop, how long that will take. So seed viability can be tested within a week usually. If you have, the results might be, if you've got 70 to 100%, you put in, forgot to mention, you want to count your seeds when they go down or when they're in. Count 10 or 20, and then you can count out of the 20 how many have germinated. If 70 to 100% or 7 to 10 have germinated, then you grow normally, you got a good seeds, and you're going to move on. If you get down to the viability where you didn't get any, in 10 days you got nothing to germinate, those seeds are no longer viable. In between, sow more seeds, a lot of seeds, because something's going to pop up. And if you've been given the seeds or they're old, you know, what have got to lose? I wanted to share with you, however, up at the tops, radishes will seed and germinate in like 3 to 8 days. Snap peas, 3 to 4 days. Look at carrots. If you're going to plant carrots and it's a great fall crop, crop, just realized that it's slow to germinate. And there's a wonderful gardener in San Diego County, Pat Welsh, who's written several books. I don't know if any of you have her book. If you don't, look for Pat Welsh on organic gardening, because I forgot to put her on the resource list, because her book is oriented by the month of the year. And if you're a beginning gardener, it's a delight, because you just open up to October and see what you're supposed to be doing in your garden. And she's just a wealth of information. Anyway, she tells you how to plant carrots. And it's crazy making, but this is the way you do it. You put it down in your, either in your pony pack, if you're starting them in the house, in whatever seed medium you're using, like your seed starting mix, and you pour boiling water over them, and then they will germinate faster. If you're outside, the same thing. I take my kettle of boiling water out, and I've laid out my carrot seeds, and I just run the boiling water across the top of the seeds and then gently cover them up. And then I get germination in closer to 10 days. It's not the 21 days. And you have to watch those carrots, but it's a tougher crop to get going, but not impossible with boiling water. Okay, moving on to light. This is for people that are starting their seeds inside. You want to start something now. It's the middle of October. You would have something started and you have second leaves up in about 2 weeks, which means that you'd be putting them in the garden sometime in November, early November. And that would be great. You would have a better start doing it inside because it's warmer inside your home and they're going to germinate faster. Seeds really like to germinate between 75 and 85 degrees. And you don't need much light at all. Putting them by a window is fine. Actually, for the first week, you hardly need anything because seeds underground need no light. They just like that warmth. So if you really want to get into this, or if you're wanting to up your game in terms of starting seeds, think about getting a seed heat mat. And they're really inexpensive. The problem is controlling the heat. So you can use your own thermometer on it. And if it's getting too hot, you can put layers of towel next to the mat to raise it up. Or you can get a thermometer or a thermostat for it. And that's where the cost comes in, because the thermostats are more expensive. And I put it on my Christmas list, and I got a nice thermostat for my son 1 year for Christmas. So, and so I'm not sure quite what they cost, but I know they're more expensive. And that's something you have to think about. Where are you going to put it in your house? How are you going to get light to it? All that sort of thing. But again, it's a lot of fun to see this come up. So if you're kind of into it, and you want to have that little bit of science, if you've got some children or grandchildren, get yourself a heat mat. Okay, now on to planting. Planting in containers. I'm going to start that first because many of you would like to start in containers. Lettuce is so easy to grow in a container. If you want quick results, something inexpensively, you can go to the store or to the garden supply or to Home Depot or Walmart or whatever and pick up a pony pack of salad of some sort or another. They even have mixed packs often. Put it in, and within like 3 weeks, you're harvesting lettuce. You can cut the whole thing or you can pick up leaves. And so boom, you've got this wonderful, what do you call it? Just success that is so fun. And that you can keep those heads going all winter. Sometimes you start in containers and move them on into the ground and you'll get, bigger heads that way or bigger leaves that way. But the containers are a lot of fun. But in containers, you want to make sure that you don't plant them too deep. This is true. I'm going to go over this with everything. But, and you want to start by having a wet mix. So you're going to put your potting mix into your container, and it can be anything. Here it looks like it's a commercially purchased pot, but you can use a 1 gallon container. You can use a plastic tub that may have cracked. What if you got a cracked plastic tub? Great, you need drainage anyway in your container. So poke a couple more holes in it, put potting soil in it, and plant your plants. That's a great way to get started, so you're not out a huge investment. Sometimes people go in and they, build an expensive $300 or $400 raised bed or raised beds, and then they don't have good success. Either it's not in the right spot, or you didn't have the right water source for it, or whatever. And you just feel defeated and you've spent a lot of money. So start out learning your yard with an inexpensive container put someplace where you're going to get good results. Okay, and then you want to add a transplant fertilizer to the mix before you plant. And unless the mix, if you buy Miracle Grow or something like that that has fertilizer in it already, you don't need that. But otherwise, add the transplanting fertilizer and water it a couple times. Make sure it's really soaking wet. Then you can add more soil because it's going to sink down. Get it up to the top of your container so you have the root space that you can get. Get the depth of your container working for you, and then add additional soil and water again. Okay, now we're going to plant. So planting transplants or seeds, actually, the seeds you're going to follow the directions are, do they have to be covered by 1/4 of an inch, or are they just going to be covered by 1 inch or 2 inches? You have to read your packet. That's another one of those pieces of information. And something that's really good to figure out how deep your row is a chopstick. You can just take a chopstick or a skewer and measure, put your ruler next to it, make a nice dark mark, and then you can hold it up next to the soil and make sure that your depth is correct for planting your seeds. Okay, now moving on to transplants. You can see by the diagram here, and it came from a great resource, Gardening for Dummies. I really love these books. They've got great charts, and they let us share them. So it's wonderful. Anyway, you can see onto the left where it's incorrect, the cotyledons, or those first seed leaves, actually have gotten under the ground, and your plant is likely to rot. It's just, you have to plant your plants a little on the high side. Very often, the plant will sink. You've dug your little hole and you've stuck in your transplant, and because that soil has been aerated as you've planted it, it will sink a little bit, and the roots will sink a little bit on your transplant. So plant high, always plant high. And so you want to make sure that that's true for everything, except I'll give you the exception. Not at this time of year. You're not planting tomatoes, but tomatoes are the exception. And it works like this: the tomato will form roots all the way up its stalk. You buy a leggy tomato, you pull off the bottom leaves, you plant it really deep, and it starts growing from there. And it's a really happy plant. But not this fall. Don't do that with any of your fall crops. Just tomatoes next spring. Okay, so how else are you going to keep this crop outside healthy? I recommend the floating road cover. Now, this is where I do think you could spend a little bit of money. You can get these at your garden supplies, rancheros, online. You can get them all kinds of places. But the word you want to put in your search is floating row cover. It's this piece of white material that goes over some hoops or over anything that you put in your bed to support it. It does several things for you. It will allow your row to be warmer, or your raised bed to be warmer. It'll grab more of that sunshine and hold the temperature in longer in the evening, and your plants will grow a lot faster. One of the best things it does also, if you seal it off, you see how the end is closed here at the end. You just have to kind of seal it all the way around, and then you never have a problem with bugs and pests getting in to get on your crop, particularly your cucurbits or your brassica crops. So your broccoli and cauliflower, you don't want aphids on those, because it just takes all the fun out of picking your broccoli if it's got bugs all over it. You can get them off by washing it, but it's really no fun because there'll be too many, and it's a flower bud and they're all inside. It's yucko. So don't do that. So the cover crop will keep the pests out. And you can leave it on for 6 to 8 weeks, which means that you'll be growing your whole lettuce crop virtually undercover. It'll come out healthy, happy, and without pests. So it's a really good thing to invest in. And you can just make you can make big hoops out of PVC pipe. You can make smaller hoops out of any kind of wire. Coat hangers work really great over raised beds. Now, climbing vegetables, like my favorite, the snap pea, they need some kind of support. And you're not going to cover crop those, except maybe just a little bit at the beginning to bring the seeds up. But it doesn't really matter what kind of support you make, but you have to kind of make it sort of sturdy. So here you'll see 2x4s in one example. And the other example, they use some kind of bamboo poles that they have tied together at the intersections going across. and bringing it up. So plan ahead. Usually it's best to put those support in to begin with. My favorite support for either summer crops or spring crops are what they call hog panels. Hog panels. And the reason I like hog panels, it's a galvanized support. You get it at Tractor Supply. So you can just go online to Tractor Supply and put in hog panels, and you're going to see these panels. The reason I like them is because they have big squares that you can reach your hand through to pick your crop. And they're really, and they're galvanized, so they last a long time. They're very sturdy. You usually only need a stake at each end, maybe every 4 feet you stake it. So it's pretty, I've even I grow passion fruit on it, and it holds up. So it's a very sturdy support. Moving on, let's say you're going to do a container. You've picked that old tub that you're just going to put some you bought a small bag of raised potting mix and you're going to put it in, but you want to plant the snap peas, or in the summer you want to plant some beans or something like that. You can just put in any kind of pole or stick, tie it off at the top, and put your plants in. Make sure your potting mix is wet, and then the plants are going to grow up these tall stakes, or you can sort of tie them up as they grow on. But beans and snap peas, they've got all those wonderful little talons that kind of grab on, those little curly cute jobbies that grab onto your posts, and they'll stick on basically by themselves. Okay, so don't hesitate to start your garden with something like, even like this looks like a black back, a side yard that they haven't done much with. It's okay, get going. All right, companion planting. I just want to cover this briefly because if you don't have much space, many of us don't have very large yards. And so we need to maximize our use of space. My last point is, but if you're just sticking in this is a spring or winter crop here, and this flower may be a little hard for you to see, but it's a nasturtium, and they grow easily in the winter. Nasturtiums, violets, pansies, violas, whatever you call them. And this behind is an amaranth. It's kind of another winter growing pollinator. And the birds and the bees and etc. love these, and they come to your garden to pollinate your garden. And so it's a great idea to do a companion crop with flowers close by to attract the pollinators to your garden if you're growing something that needs to be pollinated, like the snap peas. But when you're eating something like buds from the broccoli, it's not as critical. Maybe you don't want to plant flowers next to the broccoli because you don't want anything coming into the garden besides those broccoli plants. Anyway, you can attract beneficials. Like the ladybug will eat more than their weight a day in aphids. So, and for some reason, having some companion plants, certain plants will repel insects. And I'm recommending a book here, which is by a good scientist, because she has really looked, there's a lot of old wives' tales about companion planting, but there is some science there. So you might want to check out a book. Watering vegetables. There isn't anything more important than keeping vegetables at a moist level. And that's not as easy as it sounds, because you can ignore them from a day and you get a Santa and a wind or something and they dry out. For those of you who've had trouble with watering, which a lot of people do, you're not alone, I recommend you just get one of those inexpensive meters at your garden supply. They're usually around under $10, $6, $7, $8, something like that. And you just have to stick it in a couple inches. If a couple inches are dry, you need to be watering. As simple as that. You can use your finger, but it's not as accurate. But anyway, keep your garden moist, and watering is so critical. Mulching. If you're in the ground or even in a container, if you have some mulch available, it helps hold the moisture in, it improves the soil health, reduces weeds, helps the pest control, protects against erosion, enhances appearance. So it's wonderful. And I'm a big mulcher. So think about getting that extra bag of mulch. Or I don't recommend you using things that are just around the garden or from your neighbor, just in case it might have some disease or grubs in it. If it comes with grubs already, the eggs for grubs already laid, you might end up with a possum or a raccoon in your garden, digging the whole thing up, getting the grubs. So it's pretty good. It's best to have a sterile mulch if you're, first starting out, for sure. Fertilizing. Well, there's all kinds. And I don't think it really matters as long as you use it according to the directions. For vegetables that are blooming, like the snap peas, you want to get something that's higher in, the last two numbers. We're dealing with NPK here. I guess I should have started with that. Do I have an NPK slide? Yeah. Let me go to my NPK. The nitrogen is N, P is phosphorus, K is potassium. Every fertilizer has to have those on the label. So if you're growing something with flowers like the snap pea or some of the other winter crops, I'm losing, most winter crops don't, but there may be a few that do. You want a higher P and higher K. So your last two numbers would be higher than the first number. If you're growing, like broccoli, yeah, you want the broccoli to bloom. So you do have higher phosphorus and higher potassium. But in the others, like lettuces and your greens, and you don't want your cilantro to bloom, so you're going to look for a higher N number. And most of them will say for vegetables or whatever, but just check that out. A balanced fertilizer is okay. Early in the season, when you get started, it's particularly beneficial. Osmocote has one out that is for flowers and vegetables that is balanced, and it works pretty well. It's like 14, 14, 14, something like that. Balanced pretty well. Don't over fertilize your containers. Be careful not to fertilize your containers. Moving back to this slide, it's recommended that if you're using a liquid fertilizer, that you use half strength every 2 weeks on containers. I personally recommend that you get a transplant fertilizer that lasts a couple months, or you use a slow release fertilizer if you're just starting, because then it's once and done and you're not worried about it and you can move on. You're not going to over or under fertilize. So check that out. But when you get to be a little more experienced, you're going to find that certain things are your favorite and you'll use those. Okay, pests, weeds. I'm looking at time here. I've raced. Oh yeah, we're good. We're okay. Weeds in the garden are considered pests. Sometimes you just think of pests as being insects, but according to our, the gardeners, weeds are also pests. And they're tricky, but in a small garden area, you usually can just pick them out by hand. Try not to let them get ahead of you. If you find you have invasive weeds like Bermuda grass, then you're probably going to have some issues. It's good to know this time around, and you're going to work on it and get that out of there before you start the next time. And you can do it with fertilization or digging or raising up your bed or whatever. But Bermuda grass or invasive mint, for instance, can be really tricky if you're trying to grow a nice head of lettuce and the mint keeps getting in there and choking it off. So you need to get your mint out of the way. Mint is a good crop to grow in a pot. It's a wonderful herb for tea and other kinds of dishes like certain salads and things, but it's invasive in the garden if there's enough water and sunlight. Okay, so growing winter vegetables, you want to hand pick off your caterpillars and slugs and snails. You could put BT on and your neighbors will tell you to put eggshells around. All those things work, but it's easiest just to hand pick them. However, if you need more help, the UC system has come up with a marvelous site. It's called UC IPM, which stands for Integrated Pest Management. And integrated pest management is something you can research and you can put in the pests that you have and get it squared away. If you don't know what pest you have, but you've got a picture of it, send it to the Master Gardener hotline and email it to them, and they'll help you figure out what it is and what to do about it. So now I just want to review. Select your location with 6 to 8 hours of sun. Select what to plant, either a seed or a transplant. Pick out where to plant it, someplace where you've got 6 to 8 hours of sunshine and you know whether you've got a raised bed or whatever. Make sure your rows are going north and south. Modify the soil in the ground, 2 to 4 inches of compost, work it into the top 6 inches of soil. Containers, use prepared mixes. Planting transplants, plant high and use floating row covers. Water evenly moist and work on checking that frequently until you get the handle on how your soil works. Fertilize lightly to begin with and get rid of weeds and insects, and Check out any diseases on the IPM site. The resources I recommend are Beginning Vegetable Gardener, the Master Gardeners. This is something you can look up online. And look for something that's from us from San Diego County, because that's what grows here in our county. You don't want to pick up something that grows in Maryland because you'll be disappointed. Call our hotline. I hope you have a pencil and paper. You can call, write that number down, call our hotline. We're always ready to answer questions. We'll get back to you either on the phone verbally, or we'll email you, answer your questions by email. And then I put that book by Jessica Wallister down there also, if you're interested in doing that. And don't forget Pat Welsh, WLSH, and she's a wonderful resource. Okay, I've just wrapped it up. Now I can ready for questions. There's 5 in the chat box. I'm wondering if I can see them. Okay. Okay. Can I hear? I can't hear, but my compost computer test for audio is good. Oh dear, I'm so sorry. That's sort of late for me to hear about that. Love the ideas of containers. I'm on the telephone. Thanks. Okay. I guess that's 3 out of 5. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay, so just a couple quick questions. I have a raised bed already established, and I want to put a few inches of new soil on top of that. Do you advocate for working that in or just laying it on top? Because I've heard both.
Yeah, I know. You know, the what you've heard is don't dig. You've heard the no dig, and everybody's heard that. I'm glad you brought it up to go over it. The no dig is what it means is you dig once. So yes, if you're adding soil, you can dig once. Yes, and I would recommend, instead of adding the soil, add some compost. Get compost put in 2 to 4 inches and work that into your raised bed.
Oh,
Use
okay.
a sterile compost, because that will add the a wonderful viability and some good biology to your raised bed that
Oh,
will
okay.
really help you. Okay.
Oh,
Other
thank you.
questions? Mhm. Any other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, when I plant seeds directly in the raised bed, you know, I have the hardest time because when you plant them shallow, they always end up being sprayed everywhere. You know, when you water them, right? And so I don't have the drip, and so you know, how to avoid that, I guess, is my question.
How to avoid getting more stuff. Well, there's 2 ways. First, you could get a soaker hose, then you could hook your hose up to a soaker and lay it in there. But also you can get a nozzle for your hose that has a spray setting on it and gently do it.
Okay.
Also lay down a piece of like cover crop, the floating cover, and spray over that so that you're not disturbing the soil.
Okay.
You can
Great.
use a spray bottle rather than using your hose.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Spray bottle and just spray it. You're going to have to spray it a lot, but you won't disturb the soil when you do that. So yeah.
Okay, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
I have a
No.
question.
Okay.
I wonder, aside from herbs, are there any vegetables that you can grow indoors in a container?
Well, it depends on what you consider an herb.
Okay.
You can grow microgreens inside very effectively and use them on your salads and in your sandwiches and that sort of. And that's a lettuce blend. So it's not actually, I mean, it's, I guess, herbs, lettuces or herbs or whatever, but you know, you're using them not in small amounts for flavor. You're using them in large amounts for nutrition. And otherwise, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you had a really hot spot in your house that you might be able to do something more than lettuce, but I don't know if you get the snap peas to maturity. I'm not sure. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Bobby, yes. Okay, other questions? This is new to me. Okay, I don't see any other chats. Anthony, do you have any other things that you see?
Yeah, Gail asks, how do you prepare your soil for carrots in a container?
Oh, the same way. Just put in your potting soil and and wet it. Make sure your soil is really moist, like really moist. And then make little tiny furrows and pour the boiling water over it. And then cover it up gently, and that's it. It's the boiling water that makes it germinate quickly in containers or in the ground. I know that sounds absolutely crazy. I get you, but it works. Just, it's just this amazing trick. Okay. Other questions? No?
Yeah,
Charlotte?
Scott
Yeah.
asked in the chat, how do you sterilize homemade compost?
How do you in the oven, actually? And there, if you go online, you can get some resources on that. You can also solarize it, and that would be, you would put it in a shallow layers, probably no more than 2 to 3 inches deep. Put a piece of white clear plastic over the top of it and get it out in the sun in a real hot day and leave it there for probably a week or so, 2 weeks maybe, in the hot sun, and you will solarize it. You'll basically kill everything. You should be able to kill weed seeds that way also. I do in my compost, I sometimes get things that grow like tomatoes or whatever will grow the next year right on my compost. So on my compost doesn't get sterile. I know that. Neither do my worms castings, but you know, I have. But if you want to sterilize it to make it safe for your raised beds, that's what I would do. Okay. What else? How else can I help you? Other than saying you really need to do this fall. It is so fun to have your homemade lettuce, a homegrown lettuce and snap peas. What a wonderful. And even if you don't grow enough to have a big harvest in your house, I truly recommend having a pot of something you can go to the garden and just graze on. I love to walk through my garden and graze. I just think it's the most fun thing in the world to go out there and pick off something you've grown. Pull up a radish and rinse it off and munch away. Okay, so I see we're up to, we still have 10 minutes. Anything else? I always get on my racehorse when I'm trying to do beginning gardening in one day, a 1 hour presentation. It's really hard to do. I haven't been able to cover everything I would like to cover. If there's no more questions, I'll backtrack and talk about a couple other things. Are there more questions?
2 more questions, actually.
Okay. All right, good.
The first one is Gail asks, is worm castings a good fertilizer?
Worm castings are very excellent. Yes. I really advocate them. They have not scientifically been proven, and so the UCC cannot support this. I cannot support this because I'm a UCC master gardener and I have to stay with the company line. I've agreed to do that. However, I've had such dramatic success with using worm castings in my vegetable garden that I have to say yes, it's a wonderful source. We can't say it keeps the bugs away, but in my experience, it does. Just in my personal opinion, it does. So yeah, worm castings are great. Absolutely great. Next question.
I actually, sorry.
Oh, you can go ahead. I can read this
Sorry,
question after.
I do have another question. Last year I planted or I grew cabbage, and it was supposed to be a really tight head, and it ended up being very loose and actually flowered. There were flower starts in the middle of it. And it looked fine from the outside, but when I cut it open, it was very wide and very open and had those flower starts. Is there something I did wrong?
No, other than maybe you waited too long to harvest. That's where the back of the seed packet will help you. You want to look at those dates on there, and if it says 60 days to harvest, that's 2 months. And you're in the 3rd month, you may it's called bolting to seed. When the broccoli blooms, when the cabbage sends up flowers, when the cilantro starts to bloom, we call that bolting to seed.
Sure.
It's a natural process for the vegetables. So you want to harvest before it quote bolts to seed. And the seed packet should help you with that. It's certainly not harmful. You can eat that. You can eat the flowers and stuff. They're not harmful, but it's not the cabbage head that you wanted to make cabbage steak out of, right?
Yes, and I did eat a lot of it. So
it's good for you. It's just
thank you very much. Thank you.
What else? There was one more, Anthony.
Yeah, there's actually even more questions now, but I'll start with the next one. What is your opinion on the quality of free Miramar compost?
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I think it's out of agro service. I use it all the time. Only I use it out of Oceanside is where I get it. And I've been using it for close to 20 years. So yeah, agri-service is fine. Anything out of agri-service I think is fine. The owner of agri-service, Mary Montava, is a friend of ours, and like friend of gardeners, and she's one of those people that really knows her soil. So we call her the girl that knows her dirt. So she actually majored in it. So she puts out a very good product, very scientific in how she does it. So yeah, have no problem using a free compost from them. If
Gotcha.
you leave it with a little disclaimer, if you leave it sit out in your yard for a long time before you actually apply it, if you have a soil area that has some disease in it and you lay the compost on it, and then when you dig up, when you move the compost to your area, another area, you could carry something with it. I've heard people tell me that they've gotten it, it has weeds in it. I have never had a weed in any that I've gotten. I believe that if you get weeds in it, it's the result of it being corrupted in your garden or from your neighbor's seeds flying into your garden. So yes, it's a very good product. Okay.
You don't know about whether the Miramar compost and or mulch is the same.
I believe that it is. I think that Mary Montava acquired the Miramar site. And I have not done research, but I'm positive she has two, one of them Miramar. So check it out though, okay? Just look up to see, go on the internet, do agri-service. I can't do it for you right now, but agri-service, and then look up their locations. And there's one in Miramar and one in Oceanside. Okay.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, what else?
Yeah, Lorna asked, can you say something about how to avoid grubs and what are grubs?
Okay. Oh yeah, I have grubs, and last year they just trashed my front yard. I was just so upset. I was going out there every day, and fortunately my shrubs are fairly well established. I'm out there every day cleaning up the sidewalk and stuff. The grubs are, it's the pupate stage of the your summer insect, something large like a June bug or a big beetle or whatever. You can get a product that is called a nematode, a beneficial nematode product, which you put on. Usually it's sometimes granule, but also can be a liquid. You can get them at your garden supply. They're not real inexpensive, but they work real well. You put them on according to directions, and you put them on in the spring and the fall, and they will beneficially kill your grubs so that your possums and raccoons won't dig up your garden. So of course, putting a cover crop on it will also protect them, but I've seen raccoons go after cover crop. Raccoons can just be vicious in the garden. If you have that as a pest, I'm sympathetic. I have them, and they drive me nuts. And I don't have a big yard. I have a little yard. I just live near open spaces where there's a lot of critters. Beneficial nematodes, get a product for that kills grubs. Put in kill grubs, and you'll find a product that's a beneficial nematode product. That's the only way I know to do it. Okay, next question. Well, we have 5 more minutes. I don't know what I could re-emphasize for you. Watering is very important. Making sure you know which way your crops grow the rows, north, south, so they get the east morning sun and the sun in the afternoon. And watering I'm sorry, watering is the most critical thing, and it's the most difficult thing, particularly with seeds. I think that I heard that from somewhere about making sure your seeds stay damp. That is really tricky. You're going to be watering them once, twice a day. If you have a container, you can start your seeds, your seed container. If you can move it, if it's not too big, you can get it on a hand truck or something like that. Put it in the shade until your seeds develop their second set of leaves. and then get them into the sun. Maybe not like overnight, gradually move them in. You don't want to burn them, but, or move them into the sun and put a shade over them, like a row cover or something. But that's one way to, if you've had a lot of trouble with it. Another thing to do is grow your seeds in a pony pack first, something that you may have left over from some transplants that you buy, and put a saucer underneath it. I know people, again, saucers, water can make seeds rot. Yes, I know that. But for those of us who sometimes don't get our seeds watered, put a saucer underneath it and keep water in the saucer until your seeds have sprouted and you have that second leaf, and then get them out of the water and get them into the soil or into your container. And so I've had several people tell me, they said, I've never could grow seeds before, but now I can do it. Okay, it's a watering issue. It's a tough issue. And it depends on where your seeds are being grown and if it's too hot and all that kind of stuff. You can put a pony pack in the hot sun with a saucer underneath it, and they'll come up sun ready. Okay, I think I used up my time, and I'm happy to say anything else, but Anthony, anything else that we want to talk about?
I believe that is all the questions from the chat.
Well, I've tried to cover it from A to Z, and all I can say is thank you for having me, and I wish you happy success in your gardening this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm leaving now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Happy
Thank you,
gardening.
Catherine.
Bye.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you,
Bye.
Catherine, so much.
Okay, bye-bye now. Now I
Thank
just
you,
have-
Catherine.
You're
Wonderful.
welcome. You're welcome. Bye-bye now.
And I learned
Hi,
to
Shelley.
transplant my bushes high.
I know.
Are we doing, is there more questions now? Oh, I'm ready to sign off, but I'll wait if there are another question.
Oh, well, actually, a quick question, Catherine. How
Sure.
do you use the heating pad with the seeds? Do you lay the seeds on the heating pad?
Yeah, and you put them in your container and put them on the seed, and the container on the seed mat. So you
Oh,
would
okay.
there's kind of like a pony pack or they actually, wherever you get your seed mat, they're going to have these little seed packet, seed tray things that go on the top of the seed mat.
Okay, all right,
And
sounds
I
good.
really recommend on the seed mat, and they're fun. They really are fun, but you know, to have good results, you have to make sure the temperature is okay. So YouTube it, and you're going to find some people that tell you that they've put a wet towel on it or they've used insulation on it or whatever. And then you can also, of course, look up how much a thermostat would cost. But the thermostat, of course, is the high-end way to go, but it's a lot of fun to grow seeds that way. You could share them with neighbors. I mean, you're going to be able to grow so many seeds that way, you wouldn't even be able to plant them at all unless you have acres. So you could share them all around the world, take them to your UCC retiree friends, basically supply everybody. But it's a fun thing to do. I love it, but it's an investment, that's all.
Uh-huh, all right, thank you, Catherine.
Sure. Okay, we're
Bye.
done. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye now.